Hello, everyone. We'll start just about in a minute. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to wish all my amazing fathers out there a very happy Father's Day. And this is Hemi Gupta, Managing Director of My Whole Child, Center for Kids with Special Needs in GK2, and co-founder of My Whole Child Trust. My Whole Child, we take care of various disabilities like autism, ADHD, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, dyslexia, and many others. We believe in holistic approach, which means we look at the physical, emotional, social, developmental, behavior, and learning needs of a child as a whole child. We have also started helping families with teletherapy, which is very exciting and doable as it allows us for the families from all over India and the rest of the world to join in. But please feel free if you guys need any details for it, contact us. Today, we're launching part two of our 6 session series, The Journey of Our Child. Did we get it right? The idea behind the series is to spread knowledge and awareness of various stages of our child's bringing. We're very glad that we got many views from the session first, so it seems like it's been helping and it's been very helpful to you all. If you have missed it, please feel free to scroll down on our page and you'll see the live session from last Sunday. Today's session is about the growth and development of early years. To me, it's a very important topic because it's the first 5 years of your child's life that the brain develops the fastest. And secondly, in these years, the relationship between the build will influence the learning and development of your child. Without any further delay, I would like to welcome Dr. Naveen Mehrotra, who is taking up this series. He is also a medical director at My Whole Child Center, Delhi, and I'm sure you all know a lot about him by now. So we're very lucky to have him. Our first topic that we will discuss will be about the growth and development parameters. Dr. Naveen, we would like to talk about our development of our kids, so on and so forth. So welcome.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much,
Hemi,
Harry.
for having me back on and talking to our viewers about child development. I think people think that special needs is a very specialized topic and it doesn't pertain to them. But the purpose of doing this and talking about the normal is to identify the abnormal. So until we know what to expect in our kid, and if we are deviating from that, only then will we be able to say that, hey, I think I need help. Now, one of the most important things as parents that we should be aware of, and especially as you're going to your pediatrician, is to understand what normal child growth and development is all about. So when you're looking at the child's growth, we're usually looking at the physical growth. So we're looking at how is the child gaining weight, is the child gaining height, and so on. We all say, oh, kitna pyara bacha hai, right? Chubby, chubby, chubby. But it's not just about that. There are many different aspects of development. So in development, we'll have their cognitive development, we'll have their social emotional development, we'll have their communication skills, and so on. So we look at what we call milestones. So has the child achieved certain milestones over the course of time? And the reason it becomes extremely, extremely critical in the first few years of life is because that is where the fastest growth happens. And if we don't intervene at that time, so if we don't have early intervention at that time, often it becomes quite late. So we want to be able to understand what are normal growth parameters and is your child deviating from it if he or she is, and how do we go ahead and move forward. So physical growth, I think a lot of you, if you've gone to your pediatrician's office for general well checkups and vaccines, the pediatrician is looking also at the physical growth. So how much was the baby's birth weight? How much has the child gained in the first few months of life? How much has he or she gained in the first year of life? So there are, certain guidelines that I'm sure if all of our viewers have seen or Googled on the internet, that, by 4 months they would expect maybe double the birth weight, on by a year, triple the birth weight, and so on. But these are only guidelines. So we look at that, and the pediatrician will go ahead and put the numbers on what's called a growth chart, right? So they will go ahead and evaluate, is the child growing properly physically? Then the other parameters the pediatrician will ask you is, is the child looking at you? Is the child smiling at you? Is the child responding to you? Is the child making some sounds? And so on. So for every aspect of the other part of development, the pediatrician will ask you those questions. And once again, you as the parent need to be able to start to identify, is my child doing the right things or not?
Dr. Naveen, I also wanted to tell you that yes, our that's our biggest worry. As soon as our kid is born, that's one of our biggest concern. Are they smiling at the right age? Are they talking? Are they walking? Is there any guidebook that we have as a parent where we can just be okay about it? Because systems are a little bit different. Not in India, it's not necessarily our pediatricians do look at the growth chart, but they don't look at. We don't usually get red flags from our pediatricians. That is one concern that we have in India. Something that if you could help our viewers with that, and please, anyone and everyone, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask us on Facebook, on our Zoom. We're also live on Facebook, so please feel free to ask your questions.
So I think the shift is happening, especially as more and more pediatricians, as more and more um, governing bodies of the pediatricians and the policymakers are shifting towards highlighting, looking at developmental milestones. I think more and more pediatricians are doing that. So, whenever I've had a conversation with many of the pediatricians in India, they always say, we're so busy. There's so many other things that we need to focus on that this becomes the last thing. So if that is changing, that's great. But as a parent, we should also know. There are many different websites now where people know. And I think some of the most common ones are that they'll see, okay, well, by a year, my child has walked or not walked. Or, has the child smiled by a few months of age? Or has the child said the first word by a certain number of age? So I don't want to give you numbers because the numbers and the associated milestones are only a guideline. So we need to look at overall the child. So if the child has not walked at 12 months, or if the child has not said their first word by like 9 months, is there something really wrong? Or if the child has not looked at the mother and smiled at 2 months, is there something wrong? Yes, these are what we call red flags. So as these red flags come up, this is an antenna up for all parents out there, including fathers who are celebrating Father's Day today, that you need to go ahead and be aware of all of the different milestones and pick it up and then bring it to the proper attention of your pediatrician.
I believe the viewers had raised their hand. Can you please just send us the question on our chat box, and then we will raise it up and we will go ahead and ask that. Um, yeah, Dr. Naveen, we also have a lot of questions, not only on milestones, on growth. Um, we would like you to address more about the growth chart of our child.
Yeah, so growth charts are, little charts that we plot over time how the child's growth is. So there's a specific chart for boys, there's a specific chart for girls, and this has been made by government bodies that have evaluated thousands and thousands and thousands of kids and then created what are normograms. So every time the child comes in, if it's at 2 months or at 4 months or at 6 months, we will look at the weight of the child and we will plot the weight onto a curve, And the curve is divided up based on, fifth percentile, 50th percentile, 95th percentile, and that will tell us where the child falls in relationship to another child of the same age. Doesn't mean that if your child is at the fifth percentile, that the child is abnormal. So you should always compare your child to themselves, not to somebody else. So even if you have two kids, it should not be about, oh, my other kid was like this, and this kid is not as much, so this kid is abnormal. No. So if your child's weight is starting off at 5 pounds or at 2.5 kilos versus another child who's born at 3 kilos or another child who's born at 4 kilos, each child is normal. Each child will have their own physical development parameter. So you would need to go ahead and look at the child as the child goes over the course of the time, and each time the child will get, weight gets plotted onto the growth chart. Now, the way the growth chart becomes important is if the child starts to fall off the growth chart. Now, if the child was today at the 95th percentile, next month it comes down at the 75th percentile, the following month the child comes down to the 50th percentile, and so on. So as the child drops off the growth chart, that's a red flag for me on their physical growth, meaning that the child, there's something wrong, that the child is not getting enough calories in, or the child is burning off too many calories, or if the child is just not, that the nutrition is not helping the child's physical growth. So then we would need to investigate why that is happening and give you a solution as to what to do to make sure that the child thrives on their physical growth part. So that is how the growth charts are used. But once again, when we get into development of the other types, the cognitive and so on, then we also look at various milestones that the parents should look at or should know.
Is there any kind of medication or supplements that a parent can give to their kids to make sure that the growth is just right? I remember when I had my child, I used to bring her in every other week to just make sure to. So I'm sure there are other parents out there because we're new. If you're new parents, we're very worried, we're concerned, we're not sure what's going on, why it's going on. So, is there any kind of supplements or anything that you recommend? Which
Sure, sure. The very common question, and I think this is something that a lot of parents want to know. They want that magic potion. Can we give this to the kid and make sure the kid is that chubby, big kid, tall kid, and so on? But unfortunately, there's not. So we will get into how you can enhance your child's development a little bit later. But in terms of a nutritional supplement, the most important thing is that the child should be eating well. And I think in one of the subsequent sessions that we'll be doing, we'll also be talking about how to develop better eating habits. But for today, there's really no supplement that you can give. Even though you may be a new parent or an old parent, there are lots of ads out there. There's a lot of stuff that comes on the internet. Hey, give your kid this formula or give your kid this supplement, and their brain will be stellar. Their IQs will go up, this will happen, that will happen. No, there's nothing like that. So do not fall into that trap of taking on, wasting money on these supplements.
sure. As going forward, Dr. Naveen, would you like to tell our viewers about the importance of relationship that plays in the growth of a child's development, that influences on the growth, and how is that so important? Um,
So, so when we look at how do you enhance childhood development, one of the most important thing is the relationship of the child with their family, with their environment, with their neighbors, with their school, and everybody that is involved in the child's upbringing. So when we talk about play, play is one of the most critical pieces that we can have for the child. So if you look at research studies that look at postpartum depression, so moms who've had postpartum depressions and don't interact with the child, they the child then themselves becomes very flat in their affect. They don't smile, they don't grow to the way they need to grow. There's a lot of research out there on media that if the child is on the media all the time, that the growth, the social emotional development of the child is not correct. So the importance of having that natural connection, that relationship of the child with their environment, and that environment, that ecosystem includes the parents, it includes everybody that's in there, you know, their siblings, their nutrition, their climate, and so on. So you need to have a very good social interaction with the child, which will then enhance their development socially, emotionally, and overall. You know, there's also, you know, we used to say in the olden times, you know, malish karo bache ki, you go ahead and do these massages. And we used to think these are all old wives' tales. But what all the research nowadays shows is that the more massage you do, the healthier the baby is. Okay. The more the breastfeeding that you do, the healthier the baby is. Why is that? The reason behind it is because of the bonding that happens between the caretaker and the child, right? So the mother and the child bonding, the mother or father or grandparent who's interacting with the child to do the massage. All of these interactions, and especially today, which is Father's Day, and I think one of the brighter side of the quarantine that everybody has been talking about is the time that we have now with our kids, which we didn't have before. So we are locked in. We're trying to interact with our kids. We're trying to make the best of the situation and really utilizing play as the modem or as the mode of connection to our kids. So that is the critical piece. So when we're running around, you know, from one job to the next, or commuting, or doing anything along those lines, we're losing all that time, which now is being given to the kids. So we need to have that, you know, that connection. Secondly, we need to have healthy nutrition, making sure that everybody's eating well. Everybody has that family meal time. Everybody's sitting together. So it's not that you are sitting there, you know, eating on the laptop while you're talking to somebody else, and your kid is sitting there on the TV and eating and talking to somebody else, and so on. So that fragmented lack of connect that is there when we're eating is very detrimental to the child's development.
Yeah, true that. I have to agree that this whole time when we've been quarantined and being at home, I think it's the most beautiful time, even for the families. We never used to have so much time to be able to spend with our kids. And I think the kids are, I'm finding it amazing myself. I'm not sure about everyone out there, but I think it's the most beautiful time that we've been blessed to spend with our kids, with our family. And it's great that you get to, which we would have never otherwise into day-to-day lifestyle. Dr. Naveen, yes, going back to the growth and the development, can you tell our viewers more about um, what exactly is there, like, do you really recommend, you just mentioned about massages and stuff, do you really recommend massages for, and what is the age that is a good age for a child to be able to do that?
Yeah. So you know, we usually recommend that within a few weeks, go ahead and start the massage on the infant in the US. In India, I think they say to start the massage as soon as the baby comes home. So all of those are important factors in making sure that the child stays healthy. It's important to make sure that you do that and interact with the kid and embrace the child. So we talked about the physical interaction, we talked about the social interaction. The other most important thing that we all need to look at is the nutrition. So when you asked me earlier about the nutritional supplement, the best nutritional supplement is to understand how to have a balanced meal, how to make sure that you're covering all food groups and making sure that you have your plate that is divided in the appropriate manner. So you're covering your grains, you're covering your proteins, you're covering your dairy, you're covering all of the natural nutrients that are there in our food. So there's a lot to be said about organic food. There's a lot to be said about you know, eating what you have grown in your own garden. So gardening also is a wonderful activity for kids and families, because this is the time when you're showing the child how life happens, even though it's in the form of a plant. You're showing the interaction that the child is getting in terms of planting the seeds and watching the plant grow with the family as an entity. So, the father or the mother who's going ahead and telling the kid to here, plant this and water it every day, and then see the fruits of your action. So, eating well, making sure you're covering all of the various food groups, making sure you're having a timely meal, and making sure you're having it together so that everybody at that point at the dinner table can then talk to each other and enjoy the food. The most important thing is to be able to communicate once again, and that is what is going to have your child become much more healthy, have your child be much better in their physical growth and development, and also their social emotional growth and development.
Oh, I do want to tell all my viewers out there, please feel free to send your questions in. We will be able to answer. If not now, then once the session is over, we'll get back to you guys. So feel free to send your questions. Dr. Naveen, we have last 7 minutes remaining, so we would like you to
So
cover.
what the thing about going back to the nutrient supplements, vitamins, right? So many parents have asked about vitamins. Should they give their child a vitamin or not? Um, so the vitamin industry is one of the largest nutritional supplement industry. It's one of those industries, especially in the US, that is not very well regulated in terms of the side effect profile. you know Everybody has the concept that you can go ahead and take vitamins and they're going to be helpful to the child, but the other side of it is that if you give too much vitamins, it can also harm because the vitamin is cleared out of the body in various ways. So it can be metabolized by the liver, it can be metabolized by the kidney, and so on. So if you're putting an overload to an organ just because you've been giving them extra supplements, is not the right way to go ahead and do it. All of the foods that you take, and especially when we talk about that balanced meal, they are enriched with natural vitamins. So when you have the natural vitamins, why do you need to take a supplement? The supplement should be given if there is a documented vitamin deficiency. So when as part of our normal checkups in pediatrics, we would send your child for some blood work. And if there are concerns in terms of how the child is growing, we may specifically ask for a vitamin test. And if that is low, then go ahead and take that vitamin supplement. One of the biggest things that I know most of the kids are deficient in, and especially now because they've been staying home, is vitamin D. Vitamin D comes from the sun, and if they're not going out and playing in the sun, and if they're not drinking milk, and there's a lot of this big fad nowadays, don't drink milk, don't drink cow's milk. None of these things, if you're doing, your vitamin D level will go very low. And that's the case when we would go ahead and make sure that your child takes some supplements. Similarly, if you are vegetarian, you might have vitamin B12 deficiency, which comes from meat. But there are natural foods that vegetarians can take, which will go ahead and bring you the vitamin B12. So, for each vitamin that is critical for the child's physical growth and development, there is a vitamin that comes from a specific food. So, if the child is deficient, make sure that you go ahead and give the supplement if they're really deficient. But if you have a balanced meal, then there is no need to take any extra supplement. So, that is along the lines of vitamins. Similarly, for calories, a lot of parents will go ahead and want to give, quote unquote, and I don't want to send out brand names, but there are many different protein supplements. Should they go ahead and give their kids the protein supplement? Once again, when you're giving an extra protein supplement, you're putting all of that extra weight on the kidneys. So make sure that only when it's really needed, you go ahead and give that supplement to the child.
Um, Great, Doc. I think our these are the informations that I think it will really help us move forward in helping. Is there one thing that I wanted to tell you? Is there anything that you specifically have that you guys have a system that you guys follow, or is there a chart in US that you guys follow to see the growth and what and for the vaccination, immunization, and how does that work? And how does that play an important role in the growth of the child?
So everything is very well sort of regimented. as long as the parents and the physician, the pediatrician, are in a partnership. So if you are making sure that you are following up on the recommendations that are provided by the pediatrician, and the pediatrician is making sure that you are maintaining and they're open to all of the different visits that should be had. At every visit, the pediatrician should be looking at the growth and development, as we've already said. They should be looking at the milestones of the child. They should be then what we call doing anticipatory guidance, what to expect when the child is going to be coming in next. So if there are certain things, the milestones that are coming up in the next few weeks or in the next few months before your next visit, you as the parent should be looking out for them. And if your child is not following them, that is the time when you, as the red flag, raise up and say, "Hey, doc, I don't think my kid is doing this, this, and this. What do you think?" And that's the time when the pediatrician can validate: is it that what you're doing is right or what you're doing is wrong? And once again, if there is a deficiency or if there is something that is not normal, that is the time when you need to get at extra help. And that is where our center comes in Delhi, which you're running, is that if the child has any sort of a delay in one of those cognitive developments or social emotional or any of those aspects, then that can be taken on through therapeutic sessions. But making sure that you're able to identify, making sure that you're able to accept that there is something wrong, and then having the ability to move forward to get the right thing for your child. That is what you can do as the parent, and make sure that you are in open communication and love your child no matter how they are. So always do not find a deficiency in your child saying that, "Oh, my child, looks so skinny," or, "Oh, my child has gained so much weight, he looks fat." Those are things, if you keep on saying those to the child, it will ingrain in the child's mind and their self image will be impacted. So you want to make sure that the communication is there, but the communication should be positive on all angles. You want to make sure that the child's environment is happy and safe and conducive to making the child happy. So when we hear all these things going on around us in the news, is the child being impacted by the news? Are we making sure we're telling the child what and how to filter that information that they're getting? So these are, I think, some key points for all parents, for all families to go ahead and take back with them after this session, and hope to have a wonderful uh, time at home, especially in the quarantine time, and making sure that everybody's happy with whatever they have at home. And a very happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Naveen. Thank you. Please feel free to ask your questions, and we will get back to you. Thank you.